Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. So I hope everyone's doing good. It is Saturday at about 10:59, late morning. So yeah, it's been a pretty fun time here at Film Fanatic headquarters. I've been getting a, a ton of new movies. I've mentioned it quite a few times in some of the other videos recently where I used to when I would go on my little purchase runs when I go up to Bull Moose. I used to go like pretty sporadic. I would go every few months. Sometimes I would go every 2 or 3 months. So it'd be pretty sporadic. I would usually go and buy a bunch of stuff and then sit on it, watch all of the movies actually, and then do reviews on on all of the movies, and then watch them again and then add them onto my collection and do the same thing a couple of months later. But lately, I've been going more often, and I just been loving the whole process of buying new movies, and I've been really taking a lot of chances as far as just buying a lot of new things that I have never seen before, and it's just been awesome. I'm actually going to be going up there today. Today, which is Saturday, I'm going to be going up to Bull Moose. I ordered. It's pretty funny. I ordered a couple of albums or CDs, and it took almost 2.5 months for them to come in, and it's like, wow, no wonder nobody, well, no wonder I'm in the minority when it comes to physical media because it's a pain in the ass, and I could order the stuff directly, probably from the band's like site or whatnot, but I've done that before. I There's a band I got into that's kind of, well, they're kind of underground, but yet in their circles, or in their field, they're actually very very well known. I got into this really amazing band last year called Winterfilleth, which is probably my favorite, kind of modern black metal band. They're from England, and they have, probably about 5 albums out, and they're very well known. They are, and they aren't. They don't really come to the states to really play too many shows, but they play all these massive festivals in Europe. They're from the UK, and they've opened up and they've played lots of shows with Emperor, which is like arguably the most popular black metal band that does exist. So they've like played co-headline festivals with them and opened up for them, and have in that in their style, or in that contemporary black metal world, they're very well known. And I had ordered, I think I ordered an album from there, actually through Bull Moose. It was about a year ago, and before, but yeah, no, I tried. I should back up. I tried ordering some albums of theirs through Bull Moose, and they couldn't get them. They said their distributor did not work, could not connect with that company, or they just don't. I guess there's just not a demand apparently to for what they said, that they don't have. Their distributor doesn't carry any of their releases. So I was like, oh man, that's a pain in the butt. So I couldn't order any of their albums through Bull Moose. And one of the reasons you know, I order stuff through them, through Bull Moose, is I want to support them. I love, it's my favorite store, it's my favorite shop. So I want that place to, somehow they're able to do really well, considering how, physical media is kind of a thing of the past, to a degree. In some ways it is, in some ways it's not. In some ways it's booming. It's really strange, but so I try to bring them to business. So they couldn't even order the albums, let alone wait. If I did order them, I'd probably have to wait a long time. So what I ended up doing is I went to their Winter Phyllis website, their Bandcamp, and I ordered two of their albums through their through their website, two CDs, and it took Probably 3.5 months to get the albums, and I was just like, "What the fuck?" Wicked pain in the ass. So I thought, well, I'm gonna go to the actual site, go to the band's site, and order the albums. You figured, okay, that's gonna be a shoe in. That's gonna be a lot quicker, more efficient, and it was impossible. And I'm like, I don't understand that. I don't know what that's about. I don't usually I never usually order anything online. I know lots of people order everything online, and Amazon and whatnot, and I know lots of people that order, you know, say products, music equipment, things they need at home, or cleaners or whatever it is, food, and people always talk about the efficiency of that and how you can get something delivered within 2 days or a day or the day of, and it's really easy. But when it comes to music, it's like unbelievable. And I'm always like, not sure why the service is so bad that way. I think it's because not a lot of people do it. Everybody streams things, Spotify and whatnot, and orders albums digitally. But I like, I love having the physical media, the actual artwork in my hands, and so there's just not enough a demand for it. But I'm amazed that they're, even though that is part of the unfortunate circumstances that we're in. I would think that they would still have it set up, have an apparatus set up that when there are people out there like me who are vehement about collecting and buying the actual physical forms of their records and their albums. The uh, you know they they could just have that together, have their shit together, but it's not the case. And so I'm going up to Blue Moose today because I ordered a couple of albums from them, through them, and it's been 2.5 months, and they just came in about 4 or 5 days ago, and I'm just like, it's crazy. And they're not like super. I mean, they're not. Again, it's the same case. Two bands that I really love: Inquisition, another amazing black metal band that I love, very well known, but then not well known at all, and then another band called Chelsea Wolf, who is just an astonishing artist, and I just love her music. But again, it's that same thing: popular but not household names, kind of underground, but yet in their respective fields, very huge. They tour the world, and they've played everywhere, and very prolific as far as studio albums go. And yet you can't get their music. You can't get the physical. You have to like jump through hurdles and have lots of patience. So anyway, I'm going up there, going back up to Bull Moose, which I'm excited, to take the nice trek up there. I love going up there, and I'm gonna pick up those albums, which I'm excited about, and I'll probably pick up another couple of movies because I kind of have to. So this brings me to a movie that I bought again, like I mentioned a few minutes ago. I've been buying tons of movies I've never seen before, and this is like another example of taking a chance as a consumer, as a film fanatic, and buying a movie or buying a series or a batch of movies that I've never seen before, and just totally striking gold. And this movie is super cool. This is called Footprints. It came out in 1975. It's a Giallo movie too. It's like a science fiction Giallo extravaganza. It's really good. I have a lot of Giallos now. I've talked about the what what that means, what is a Giallo, and so, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I don't have any Giallo films that have a science fiction world attached to it, or a science fiction aesthetic, and it's, or like a science fiction based Giallo film. So it's really unique. And again, this is another Severin release. I have like pretty much every movie I've been doing the last, every review, every post I've been putting up. the last 4 or 5 months has been a Severin release, and man, Severin is just knocking it out of the park this year. They've always been really great. They've always been one of my favorite labels, but they have really been, you know, just releasing just top-notch movies over and over again. And about 85% of these releases that I've been getting from Severin, I've never seen before, and they just continue to amaze me. And these movies are so obscure. Unless you're a hardcore collector or really into the cult exploitation world, you're not going to know of these movies. But these movies are just so fun, exciting, and I think really important. Recently, there was a guy that I know who is this guy Robert, who is I've actually talked with him quite a few times. Really talented musician and artist, and he's also very much into horror movies and exploitation movies. And he just recently did a post of where he talked all about Giallo films. And Giallo is such a unique art form, and it's one of my favorite kind of subgenres in the world of exploitation, and particularly in the horror exploitation. Because the Giallo thing is, I grew up watching a lot of Giallo films as a kid. They would be on cable, or I would, get them back in the days of, when VHS stores were everywhere and you would rent VHS tapes or buy them. But I never knew at the time. I was very, very young. I'm a child of the '80s, so I was very young. So I never knew what the term Giallo was, actually until just a few years ago. But I had seen quite a few, and I always loved them. And the Giallo art form is such a unique art form. It's one of my favorite subgenres of the horror exploitation world. It's kind of like the Italian version of the classic kind of Agatha Christie structure, or they're essentially murder mystery films, but they also have big time influence of lots of the things that we love in horror films. They typically, there's always an investigative element to the film. There's always their Giallo films tend to be very mysterious. They they have a surrealistic quality. There's usually always a typical trope, which is definitely of the horror genre. Typical trope of a lot of the Giallo films is along with the murder mystery aspect, with the kind of the Agatha Christie structure of a story, or even like Sherlock Holmes. There's a horror element where there's usually always a gloved killer. That's typically what you see. Is there's always a killer whose method of killing people is usually, with some kind of blade. There's always the glove killer, always wearing leather gloves. You never get to see the killer. There's not like a big plot reveal, or not until the end sometimes, to a lot of these films, of where you suddenly find out who the killer is, but there's a lot of mystery as opposed to around who that person is. And a lot of Giallo films also have this, they can be very gory and very violent. And there's always, a lot of the times too, there's like a sexual aspect or some kind of psychosexual aspect to the film. So, there's a little bit of things are fetishized around sexuality. So there's that hyper reality around sex and violence in a lot of Giallo films. There's the fetish aspect. But first and foremost, what makes a Giallo film is usually the mysterious qualities of the film. And again, I watched this actually last night, and it's amazing. Footprints. It's a very slow movie, and it's about a lot of these films, a lot of exploitation movies are an hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half. They are typically not very long movies. This movie is a little bit longer, about an hour and close hour and 40 minutes. So it's a little bit longer than say your average Giallo film, but and it's a very much a slow burn film, but it's amazing. And I think the even though the pace of this film is slow, it's really magical. And there's a great plot reveal by the third act of this film. It has a very well, even most giallos always have a very dreamlike quality to it, but this movie has a very surrealistic quality to it. I kind of feel like this movie is as mysterious as this movie is, and it came out in 1975. I kind of feel like this movie is about it totes that line of whether things are happening in reality or in the consciousness or unconsciousness around the lead character. And I kind of feel like this movie is more or less about a person or a woman losing her mind. It's about, somebody becoming insane. Even though you could look at it in a literal sense, and see because it has a very much a sci-fi element to it, and it stars Florinda Balkman, and it's an Italian film. And again, that's one of the things I've talked a lot about buying a lot of these movies, especially Italian movies, and anything that's European. It has two different cuts included in this beautiful package. There's the English theatrical release, and then there's the Italian version, where you can watch it in its native language with English subtitles. And whenever I get a movie, I always go for either like the director's cut or the Spanish version or whatever country the film came out, or the Italian version, whatever particular country the the film was created, and I usually go for its native language because I always find the story, everything is way more cohesive as opposed to watching the English dubbed versions. They're still great and fantastic, but a lot of the times a lot of the American versions of a lot of these films were, edited and cut. Things were cut out, and sometimes the storyline isn't, as cohesive. But this movie is wild. It's a trip. It's super trippy. It's very very slow, but I think it really works. I think the slow pacing of this film really makes this movie very interesting because you have to pay attention, and you have to kind of invest a little bit extra time to what you're to how the story slowly opens up, and the interesting areas that the film goes to, and the different places the film goes to. The cinematography is just spectacular. It's one of the most gorgeous films I've seen in a really long time. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful cinematography. The cinematography I feel is so strong that it acts like a character for the film. There's a really great interview with the filmmakers and also the cinematographer for this film, whose name escapes me right now. But this movie's just spectacular, and it's hard to believe the. I mean, almost I could see this film almost being looked at as, because it's so well done. It's definitely an exploitation movie. It's definitely a giallo film. It's very low budget, and it has this really kind of dirty quality to it, and it's really raw. But there was so much care and love put into this film, and it has that. People could also call this movie, an art house film. It has a real high level to it. It's the attention to detail, the cinematography. There's so many scenes in this movie where the way every scene is structured and framed and then shot is breathtaking. I mean, it's beautiful. It almost feels like you could take almost any scene in this movie and it looks like some kind of gorgeous painting that you could see in a museum. I mean, it's pretty breathtaking. The music is really great, and it's and again, you could, the storyline, you could take it two ways. You could say that this movie is just really a character study of this woman losing her mind, and where she's like hallucinating and she's very paranoid, or you could take it, in a literal sense of where you kind of invest yourself a little bit more in the fantastical elements of the movie, the science fiction aspects of this film, because it's very strange and it's very bizarre and it's really unusual. Because I've never seen a Giallo film that has a sci-fi quality quite like this. A lot of Giallo films that I have and that I've seen are pretty grounded in, so-called reality, even though the universe to a lot of these great films is very, heightened and surrealistic. So it's very interesting. It's very, very unique. This package is amazing. I love that it comes with both versions of this film. Just killer. And I huge fan of Giallo films. I have quite a few Giallo films right now, and it's one of my favorite genres. It's probably, in the world of exploitation movies, my two favorite subgenres. My favorite being the slasher genre, first and foremost. If it's a slasher movie, I can watch it anytime, any day. And I'd say probably my second favorite would be Giallo. I've really learned to appreciate these films and fall in love with them. I think these movies are good movies too for people who are, say, maybe not, if the world of exploitation is something very foreign to them, or they you know they might have this preconceived notion that exploitation movies are just really just dirty and nasty and violent and vile, which there are lots of movies out there in the exploitation movie world that are very brutal, but there's there's so much variety to the genre. You can't really pin it down, and I feel like a movie like this would be a good introduction. I think for someone who is curious about this unique world that was that had its heyday in the late '60s, '70s, and '80s. To this very unique form of filmmaking. Giallo, I think, is really influential on a lot of newer films. I mean, just recently, Maxine came out, directed by Ty West. And as the conclusion to his amazing trilogy, with X being the first one, Pearl, and then Maxine starring Mia Goth. Amazing films. I think for me, the best modern day franchise that's out. And have the most, like, in the most the most contemporary light. But the third film, which I saw in the theater, and it's amazing. I was like, this movie is so awesome. It's a pure. I was really surprised, but that movie is such a giallo. That movie is so influenced by the giallo art form, and it's definitely a slasher movie too. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing that these films have had such a an impact on movies now that come out in 2024. So it's a really it was a really special and magical time for for filmmaking, and the giallo art form itself doesn't really, it was very, a lot of fantastic directors, Jess Franco and Sergio Martino, a lot of, Lucio Fulci, a lot of directors, even Dario Argento, made so many great films, during those decades, the '70s and '80s, and it's kind of a thing of the past, but its impact is still, you know, influencing filmmakers, and but such a great art form. But I think a movie like this would be great as someone who is curious about something, and they might have this preconceived notion about what exploitations, what that means. And this movie is really great because it's not, and it could be a good movie for someone who is, maybe they don't have a high threshold for, you know, high sexual movies that have a high sexual content or violent, or certain kinds of lines that or boundaries or thresholds when it comes to violence. This movie could be a really good kind of introduction to the world of exploitation. So thanks again. I can't recommend this movie enough. And again, Severin just knocks it out of the park. Footprints, awesome, awesome movie. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.